to give a bit of a context then, I don't know how many people have got access to a microphone, and if you have, whether you just want to say who you are and where you're from, so we've got an idea of colleagues, not just virtual presence, but actually we can hear you say a few words about how you come to be doing this award or interested in this award. If nobody has a mic, I'll give it 25 seconds or 20 seconds, and if nobody speaks, I'll assume silence means you're all listening avidly, but you can't actually communicate back with us, and we'll rely on the chat box to get your input.
Hi, Josie.
Okay, I guess we're relying particularly on the chat then for your for you to raise issues or questions as we go along. And as I say, we're going to do a bit of a treble act, and I'm just going to kick off. What we've tried to do is to think about what might be useful for you to hear in terms of the questions you might have arrived with, and you'll see questions pop up on the slides. But in the first instance, thanks Kathy, that's really helpful. In the first instance, Kath, if you want to just move that first slide to the second slide. We've invited the introductions. John's going to talk a little bit about the title there, at least I think that was our plan. And just to draw your attention to the URL that on that page that Kath's now highlighting, that's where you can find the award handbook, and that's going to be a fairly crucial document for the next period of time up until December. And if there isn't stuff in there, then we'll be needing to pick up on that, but we've intended to make it as comprehensive as we can be in terms of giving you a kind of orientation and a set of expectations for the scheme. So without more ado, I'm passing on to John Peters, and I think Kath will make you the presenter, John, so that your slides will appear on the screen, and when she's done that you need to hand back, and you can do that by going to the right-hand screen, and if you need a bit more information, we can talk you through that. But without more ado, pass over to John.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm hoping you can hear.
We can.
Excellent. Okay, I was asked to introduce the award a little bit and talk a bit about how we came to be here with this named award now, and say a little bit about the shape of the award in terms of its development. I suppose the why now is about the way personal and academic tutoring is continuing to develop and change over time. You'll notice from the slides that, as well as working some of my time with the Centre for Recording Achievement, I'm the head of academic practice at Newman University. And John Henry Newman famously commented that an education system without the personal relationship between tutor and student was an ice-bound and petrified education. So in terms of one of the sort of shaping fathers of UK higher education, he was very clear in terms of saying how important academic tutoring was. but we've come a long way since then. It's still regarded, I think, as one of the key aspects of UK or UK-informed higher education to have some sort of tutorial academic tutoring system in place, even if it's not the Oxbridge model that Newman was talking about. But in recent years, with the growth and expansion of higher education, I think it's that process, that personal relationship has come under a huge amount of pressure because of the sheer numbers we're dealing with, because of questions about consistency of practice and provision, and how we make all this work effectively in what has become a mass higher education system. And that's involved, I think, a move towards a more systematized approach to personal academic tutoring. And I suppose the question that we're all working with at the moment is, how do you keep the relationship personal, and how do you make sure that it is helping the students in terms of their academic development in a systematized framework of tutoring. And I think that will be one of the themes that we'll come to as we work through this program, and I'll talk at more length about this perhaps in the next webinar that we do. This particular award came about at this time because we had a meeting in January 2015, the first national seminar on personal and academic tutoring. And one of the things that we were asked to consider at that was, what would an award for personal tutoring look like, and would it be worth looking to develop on? And we held a workshop in the afternoon at that session where we discussed with those present, and I think we had about 70 odd people there from a range of different institutions, what they thought the learning outcomes for a personal tutoring award would be. And this has directly grown out of that in terms of discussions with SEDA and taking that forward and developing it as a named award within their PDF scheme. So I'm going to say a few words about the sort of key players in this, just as introduction. So I'm sure most of you will know what the Centre for Recording Achievement is, but it's worth saying that it's a network organisation, an educational charity. It tries to cover the whole range of education, from 14-19 higher education and through into employment and professional bodies in terms of working on CPD, to promote the value of learning through recording achievement, planning processes, and so forth. It's got around 100 members from across that range. SEDA is a similar sort of body in many ways. SEDA stands for the Staff and Educational Development Association. It's the professional association for staff and educational developers in the UK, and it promotes innovation and improved practice in higher education to benefit student learning through provision of professional development to academic staff and any staff who support student learning. So it was quite a good fit, I think, in terms of talking to SEDA from the CRA about what we could do. SEDA has a framework already in place, which is called the Professional Development Framework, which provides recognition normally for higher education institutions to then be able to run accredited provision with their own staff on an individual basis, where individuals who complete the programme at the HEI get a SEDA certificate with a named award on it for doing that, that piece of development work. So it's a way of providing national and international recognition, because SEDA PDF programmes work and run outside the UK for engagement in professional development. One of the strengths, I think, of the PDF framework is that it's not at any particular academic level. So the key thing are the learning outcomes in terms of describing what it is we want to think about, and then operating to those by working through the process. So it uses a range of named awards to accredit different types of professional development, and all the named awards share a common set of values and a set of core development outcomes, and that's the same for this named award. But then each named award has its own set of specialist outcomes. So currently, SEDA has this whole range of professional development framework named awards, and we developed and added in conversation with SEDA, a named award in professional and academic tutoring, in personal and academic tutoring. So, in terms of thinking about what we're doing with this award, just like all the other SEDA PDF accredited programs, there are a set of core outcomes, and these fit very well, I think, with the CRA's goals and ideas about how we learn best in terms of professional development, because they talk about the same sort of reflective and action cycle that the CRA talk about, and it's embedded within the SEDA PDF framework. So colleagues who take part in the named award are asked to identify their professional development goals, plan some continuing professional development, undertake development activities, and then review. So you can see that very much as it's an identify, plan, do, review process. There's also the set of professional values that underpins every SEDA award. And the idea is that any named award that you do, it's about engaging with these values and being able to talk about how they influence your practice. I think these are reasonably uncontroversial and will probably reflect professional values that people have at their own institutions in their own settings as well. But starting with a commitment to developing an understanding of how people learn, so the importance and centrality of student learning in this process. Making sure that we practice in ways which are scholarly, are informed by the evidence, are professional and ethically sound. Working with and developing learning communities, and I think this award is actually an attempt to do that, because we're operating in a slightly different way from other SEDA PDF awards in being based, working with SEDA and the CRA together to provide a national award that, for the moment at least, is not institution specific, and that may be a development that occurs in a year or so's time, but for this year we're looking at this award being offered nationally to try and develop that national learning community around personal and academic tutoring. About valuing diversity and promoting inclusivity should speak for itself, and as it's embedded in the other outcomes of the award, continually reflecting on practice to develop ourselves, others, and the processes we engage in. So that's talking about personal academic tutoring processes, particularly in this area. So I hope we've got the right audience here. I hope you feel you're one of this audience for the new SEDA PDF award in personal academic tutoring. It's intended for those who are directly involved in personal tutoring of students in post-compulsory adult education HE settings, and that you're actively working with students in some part of your work to do that. It's not aimed primarily at, for example, at policy making level in terms of personal academic tutoring as an institution. It's intending to be inclusive, however, to people who are working in different ways with students in terms of their personal and academic tutoring and the support that they provide. So it could be that it comes from academic staff or student support services or dedicated specialists in certain areas. I think it's important to us that the award is open to academics and professional staff alongside each other. So the aims of the award, as we've put them to SEDA, are to support the professional development of individuals working in personal academic tutoring, to be able to offer recognition of individual practice and progress that people are making, to support your reflection on personal academic tutoring, to support you in enhancing practice, and to work with enhancing the systems that you work within, and through that to influence and hopefully enhance personal and academic tutoring practice more widely across the sector. Sounds like a rather big aim for a small word, but you have to start somewhere. And finally, in terms of my introductory bit, these were the specialist outcomes that we came out of the first national personal academic tutoring seminar with. We took people's suggestions away and built them into these, and it might be worth having a little to and fro in terms of a few questions and answers about these if you think that's appropriate, in terms of setting out whether this is what we thought personal academic tutors' key and core skills and activities were that they would be able to demonstrate and work with. So we thought it was important, first of all, to understand the situated practice that people have. So the nature and limits of personal academic tutoring where you are and in your setting, because it's going to be different for different people. And I think it would be useful to the group as well that we are able to share our different experiences of the nature and limits of personal academic tutoring at our own institutions, because I think we could learn quite a lot just from doing that. Then it should hopefully be about supporting individual student personal academic and career development. It may be that individuals' particular roles are focused on more specifically on any one of those three areas of personal academic and career development, but I would suggest that any serious intervention in any one of those areas is going to impact on the other two areas anyway. So that's meant to be an inclusive description of the range of support that people will be offering for students in terms of their development. And that phrase, student personal academic and career development, actually comes from QAA guidance originally on I think on personal development planning back in 2001. Then there was a learning outcome about skills, in terms of the skills of working with individuals to support their personal academic career development. Then an outcome about recognising, I suppose, the limitations of the role of the personal tutor. So about advising and guiding students on issues arising while they're studying as the first point of call often for students, but also recognising that a key part of the role is to direct students on to more specialist services available within the institution. And finally, to make sure that all this activity is evidence informed, done in relation to the research and the literature and the theory about personal academic tutoring, so that we are improving, evaluating and enhancing practice in an evidence informed fashion. And I think that's probably enough from me in terms of talking through the framework for the course. In terms of where we are at with it, it's been through the mentoring process with SEDA in terms of the development of the award. We are now at the final stage. The documentation is with SEDA. We're due to have our final accreditation visit with the CRA, but we've got agreed that this is going ahead for this year as a pilot to look at how this will work as a national joint award between the CRA and SEDA, with the CRA providing the tutoring and the leadership of the delivery of the award, and SEDA providing the certification.
Thanks very much, John. John, can you make Kath the presenter, which you can do by right-clicking on her name, and you'll get a little drop-down menu there. Right-click on her name in the attendees, and you can make her the presenter.
There we go. I've done that.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. And Kath, if you can move us on to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, so John's given you a bit of a flavour of how we've got here. Some of the elements in the framework we're working to before I pass on to Steve. So what we're doing on these two slides, this one and the next one, we'll move to the next one in a minute or two, is just flagging up the entitlements, if you like, the opportunities as well for individual support, and we will be writing out to each and every one of you to identify how that support will be provided. Our aim in doing that is really to support your work, and we'll come to that a little bit later on too. We want to facilitate some collaboration within and across institutions, because as John said, this is not confined to one institution, so potentially it's a very rich richer learning environment. And then we'll be providing some feedback as the portfolio work develops. It's worth saying at this point that this is an award which seeks to capture and distill the learning from current practice. So you'll need to be doing something in terms of personal academic tutoring to meet the requirements during the time of the award is running. It's a little bit different in that context to the HCA system, where it's possible to write things up retrospectively. So this is about improving practice as well as documenting and accrediting practice. Kath, if you can move us on to the next one, that would be great. Okay, so there are some elements we've just talked about in terms of mentoring and in terms of collaboration, in terms of feedback. In addition, we're making some materials available directly through the CRA website. This is a developing resource, so if you have resources that you think we should include on that, please let us know. We want to build that up as a resource for the community. Each aspect of the portfolio requirements, excuse me, will have a scaffolded portfolio page to go with that. And I'm going to pass over to Steve in a minute, and Steve will talk about the assessment elements. And particularly for Shepard Hallam, and Kathy's with us today, there's the element of supporting local implementation, where the mentoring is being done by colleagues from the institution, but with still some common reference points, and we've listed those three there. That's the baseline, if you like, in terms of support. We'll come back to mentoring in a little while, but in the meantime, I'm going to hand on to Steve. I think we'll keep the slides with Kath, unless you want to be the presenter, Steve. Do you want to be the presenter?
I just have been made presenter.
Yes, I know. That means you've lost access to the slides, though, unless you've got them there.
Oh, yeah. Indeed, I have, so I can't see them, yeah. In which case, no.
Okay. Okay. Can you make Kath the presenter again? This proves it's live, by the way.
Yeah. How do I do that? I go to attendees.
That's it. Okay. Can you move that one on then, Kath, for Steve, please? Thank you.
And on to the next one, Kath, please. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody, from me. If you can't hear me or I start to splutter, my apologies. I've got a streaming cold. But hey, here we go. So, assessment. This bit is to, as simply as we can, describe the assessment requirements. The important thing is to reiterate what Rob has just said, and that is that unlike academy fellowships, this program is focused on being a practitioner, and it's a do review model. So it's about review, looking at what needs you might have, what experiences you might have, and then moving on to do something. And we structured that into a number of tasks. So task one, I'll leave it with you to read. You don't need me to read it out. Before moving on a little bit, I've got the chat box open. So if anybody's got any questions as we go through it, write them into the chat box and we'll address them. So task one is a review. Importantly, it's asking you to think about what roles that you currently have which explicitly support student development. We've got some illustrations there. There could be more. I came across an institution last week where all students get a personal coach, and coaching would come under these roles, and review of coaching, if that's what you're doing. Any questions so far? Nope. In which case, next slide, please, Kath. And again, I'll give you a couple of minutes to read through what is quite a lot of text. All of this text is taken from the handbook. One of the things you might like to think about doing for this stage is to do a SWOT analysis of your own practices, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity and threats of where you are at the moment. Any questions? In which case, let's move on to the next slide, please, Kath. An important dimension here, again, is to reiterate what both Rob and John introduced before me, and that is that we're looking for a scholarly approach to reviewing. So we're looking at the use of a scholarly literature to inform your thinking, as well as looking for an evidence base for your thinking. And as we come to the end of this stage, we're looking at your thinking about potential, which gets us on to task 2, which is about setting some goals for yourself. Different ways of setting goals, and we will put goal setting resources together for you, but often people, as I suspect you will have done, use SMART criteria for goals. That goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and within a clear time scale. And we've got various resources we can put in to help you, and also some templates. Noticing for task 2, the plan should be revisited and reviewed at least twice during the award. So one of the other principles that we are working to is that it's a dynamic process. And as with all dynamic developmental processes, one might expect there to be some change to your original thinking as you start to go through it, and that's fine. I noticed Janet's arrived, so welcome to Janet. And if there's anything else that Janet wants to add to the assessment notes as we go through them, that would be great. Next slide, please, Kath. Task 3 to 6, we've moved from the review stage to the doing stage, and you say 3 to 6, this will be something to be discussed with your mentor, where you actually set about undertaking some enhancement or development activities which emerge out of your objectives. Each one of these will need to be written up, and at least 4 of them need to be written up. Of the 4 accounts we said here, 2 of those should relate directly to work with students, but we're not being specific around the settings. Next slide, please, Kath. These are the criteria we're working to when we're looking for your reports. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to read that. Hi, Janet. Whoops. And as John has said, we would want to encourage people to collaboratively work on their accounts, of course, without having to disclose things they wouldn't want to disclose. But the more we can be generative and collaborative across the program, the better. Any questions for these criteria? In which case, let's move on to the next slide. An additional dimension to your thinking might be working with policy considerations, working with managers, as well as working with students. And again, we'll be interested in those kinds of reflections that you might have, and again, looking to those reflections being scholarly and evidence-based. Thanks, Kath. Next slide, please. The final task, review and present. And again, I'll give you a couple of minutes to read the text. So before you submit your portfolio, here are some criteria for what we expect of your reflections. The important thing to close the loop, as it were, is to ascertain the extent to which you've been able to enhance and develop your practice as a result of the things you've been doing, which in turn relates to your original SMART objectives. Of course, it may be that something goes desperately wrong and it didn't enhance at all. We would like to hear from that as well. That does not mean to say that you have failed the program. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback within this context. And we look forward to those lessons you might have learned as well. Things which don't work, we want to know about, as well as the things that do. Next slide, please, Kath. And there we have the deadline dates for those different assessment tasks. These slides will be available, so you don't have to start busily writing them down or getting your diary out. But as you can see, it's we hope they got the balance right between giving you the right amounts of time according to the life cycle of your working, at the same time as not being so liberal that there's no deadline at all. So we will have deadlines and we will keep to them.
Steve, can I just add one thing there which we haven't mentioned, which is in the middle of that slide, and it just says portfolio self-assessment checklist. And just to note that you'll find that available to you in the handbook, but also in the portfolio pages on the CRA site. And that's to give you the chance to make sure your portfolio meets the requirements before you give it to us. And it goes back to what Steve was saying about we're keen to support people in success, but we're not thinking that a certain percentage of people will not achieve this award. Ideally, our responsibility is to help as many people as can achieve it to achieve it. And that, I think, will be helped if people do a review by just checking out their portfolio materials before they hand it to us. And I think the other thing to say is just to reinforce what Steve was saying. We've tried to get a time frame laid out, which is indicative, it says at the top, but it is intended to give you a structure to work to and to enable portfolios to be in by the end of December, and for you to get some pretty early feedback, given that we've got the Christmas holidays, in terms of summative assessment and feedback. So hopefully that will have a rapid turnaround time, given that we're in the depths of the winter.
Thanks, Rob. Janet, have you got anything to add? Welcome from Starbucks.
Hi. I'm not going to say much. because it's noisy here, but no, that sounded absolutely fine to me, and I look forward to working with those of you who I've been assigned to. So hi everybody.
Thanks. Thanks, Rob. I think we move on to the next slide.
I think we do, yes. Shall I say a bit about this one, Steve, just briefly? There's just 2 more slides, and then I think throw it open for questions, which could be in the chat or directly if people have a microphone. I think this follows on a bit from what we've been saying, which is that so there's a team of mentors, we are that team, and of course if the provision is mentored locally, that would be slightly different. This is an incomplete list of the sort of things we might do. We want to help you engage with the tasks and indeed the whole process. We will, I think, remind you from time to time of the time frame. We'll do some progress chasing, but it's not our job to get your work in. So we'll assume that progress chasing is our job and portfolio building is yours. We will, though, as part of the work we're doing, be convening with some support from external resources, a number of online activities, and I'll just come to the first couple of those in a moment. And last but not least, in this incomplete list, we'll be providing some feedback on your developing portfolios by request, I think. So in terms of our final slide, Janet's reinforced about she's in Starbucks, and she's got a cup of coffee, I think, too. Can I just say this award is not sponsored by Starbucks, despite the sign in the background. We're going to do a couple of things fairly immediately after Easter. We're going to offer what we're going to call an online clinic, and that's reflective of the reality that you might go away from this hour and you might come up with lots of questions as a consequence, or lots of issues you want to debate. So shortly after Easter, we'll run a meeting for your reflected upon questions, if you like. That's the focus for it. We won't come with an agenda. You might come with a desire for clarification or more information, or some queries after you've read the handbook or looked at the portfolio scaffolding pages on the CRA site. So that's a fairly immediate item, and we'll be offering some dates for that in the near future, but probably not until we've had the Easter break. We'll be offering, in addition, 2 immediate online opportunities. John will be building on his work that he started to describe earlier on about some of the key questions that goes with this award, if you like, and the 2 we've listed there. One is, why does this matter, and why does it matter now? In one sense, we've had a tutoring tradition in UKHE, but in another sense, the world is very different than from when Newman said it into the 21st century. And the second online opportunities will be revisiting the webinar that was run, facilitated by Janet last time, and I hope we should do the same this time, looking at institutional perspectives on tutoring and how those are evolving and developing. And I think, if I'm right, we had Exeter, we had Manchester, and we had UCL contributing to that. So 3 institutions, each with some different thinking about how tutoring might evolve in the 21st century. Last but not least, and it's not intended to be a threat, your mentor will be in touch. Everybody on the programme who's not being locally mentored has been allocated a mentor, and so we'll be writing out to you in the next few days just to identify ourselves to you, and it's your opportunity to come back to us and say whatever you need to say as we embark on this programme together. Steve's put a note in the chat which relates to the external examining. We should say that we are intending that your mentor will take a strong role in supporting portfolio building, but will also be the first assessor that there will be a second assessor for all portfolios because this is a national pilot. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to give any of the team a chance to say something, wants to say something, but more importantly, I'm going to give colleagues who are joining us as mentees, as it were, a chance just to jot things down or to say things directly to us, ask questions, ask comments, be as rude as you like. So I'll shut my microphone down and leave the line open for, as I say, for comments, questions, queries, etc. It's a bit like one of those induction sessions you run with students and you're not entirely sure whether you've given out all this stuff and it may or may not have been helpful to hear it. So I think just to pick up a couple of points. One is this session is being recorded and we will make it available to you. So you can come back and listen to it again if you can bear to. The second thing is anticipating that people might want to have a think about stuff, to get their ideas thought about, to look at the handbook. We've had the intention, which we've shared with you, to run that online clinic, and we'll be making details of that available in the next few days. So if you don't have questions for now, hopefully you will have some either you can address directly with your mentor when they get in touch, or you can come to the online clinic. We'll talk about them there. Thank you for David for that. All feedback as well is welcome. So that's good. And we will speak again, I'm sure, through the online sessions that we're facilitating, and as I said, directly with you as mentees. Are there any final questions that people want to check with us before we bid you farewell and happy Easter? Thanks very much, Nabu. That's great. I think part of our job will be to come back to you and remind you of the various stages and the time frames as we go along. We'll be practicing our nagging skills.